Hello, friends. You're watching Simply Well. Today, I want to talk about the elephant in the room. My husband brought this up recently. He brought it up in the context of his own health, which is he basically said that if he's eating really, really well, and yet he's sort of falling into old patterns, for example, patterns passed down generationally in his family, the habit of drinking every evening, he's not really truly taking care of himself. He's, doing really good in certain areas, but then in another area of his life, he's just basically ignoring the elephant in the room. And so this got me to thinking about how cool it would be if we in the Simply Well Forum could help each other stay accountable and help support one another in looking at what our own particular elephant in the room is and helping each other to really stay on task with truly addressing the area in our life that we all personally know is the area that we could make the most headway in our health, and yet we're ignoring it for whatever reason. So I'll just speak personally for me. I know for me, the elephant in the room is definitely exercise, vigorous exercise. And I haven't had vigorous exercise in quite a long time. Since becoming a mother, it's definitely become more challenging. I have had some little bouts of consistent exercise since being a mother, and it requires childcare, or so I tell myself. That's sort of what's interesting about these elephants in the room. Like, what are the ways, what are the stories that we tell ourselves to sort of justify avoiding looking at the thing that we know we really need to do to be healthy? So obviously for me, having childcare certainly helps with being able to exercise, and having consistent childcare would certainly help with me having consistent exercise. But ultimately, that's sort of just a cop out and an excuse. Like, I've been dancing a lot more recently in order to get exercise, and I can do this with my son. I also think that it would be really beautiful to be able to emulate to my son doing a yoga practice, or doing some, really, honestly, any kind of centering practice, whether it's meditation or yoga or dancing, to sort of demonstrate to him that this is how we take care of ourselves, that it's important for us to take care of ourselves, rather than just telling myself the story that the only way I can really take care of myself is when my son is in childcare. And if I tell myself that story, then my son is never really witnessing me taking good care of myself, right? So childcare can't really be an excuse for being healthy if I really, truly do want to be healthy, as I say I do. And yet, so I don't really know what it is about the part of myself that sabotages the ability to be truly healthy through exercise. I think on some level it's a little bit of, I don't want to say laziness because that sounds judgmental, but maybe lethargy is a better word. I've had a lot of adrenal fatigue in the past few years. I don't have migraines anymore, but in the years that I did have them, it's really amazing how just like having a mild headache, even if it isn't a migraine, just really affects your energy levels, and brain fog really affects energy levels. And so there's like a certain lack of vitality, I feel like, in people who have migraines. People who have migraines also, I mean, if I'm any example of that, tend to be fairly cerebral, which is kind of funny because we don't have as much blood flow to the brain as some other people, but there's a lot of inflammation in the brain, and I think that leads to a lot of activity in the brain. And so really what I'm thinking about recently, as far as how you guys could support me to just kind of like start this experiment of basically sharing with you what the elephant in my room is, and asking for support with my own health process. I've been here supporting you guys a lot, and I think it would be a beautiful vision in this community for us to all sort of be vulnerable and put it out there what we need support with. And so what I need support with is reminders and encouragement to exercise, even if someone's just, sending me a private message as a reminder, or asking me, Mario, what kind of exercise have you done recently? And I kind of feel like when you have a community of healthy, loving people who are kind of aware of what your struggles are, and they're supporting you in a loving way, that it sort of challenges us to be more accountable than we would be just to ourselves or to our partners. Like, for example, I know with my partner, I'm somewhat defensive when he, tells me I should exercise, even though I know he's coming from his heart space and that what he's suggesting is absolutely true, because it's just, somehow it's harder to take advice from people who are like really close to you. So whether or not you guys try to help hold me accountable to my desire to exercise more or not, I kind of feel like making this statement and making it publicly and putting it out there in the forum might help me to be more accountable. And I really know that, like, I totally have my diet dialed and I don't get migraines anymore. So on some level, I don't really have much of a motivation or reason to do exercise other than that. Like, obviously, I could take my health to a whole new level if I did that. But in terms of just like managing not to have like incredibly horrible, debilitating symptoms of migraine, I don't need to exercise in order to do that. And so I think I think when you've been really sick, if you reach a level of not being quite so compromised, and because the ordeal was so exhausting, there's a tendency to kind of rest on your laurels a bit because, it's like if you've accomplished a higher level of health, it's like you're just so grateful that you're not being tortured anymore, right? But I really very strongly feel that the fact that I got such horrible migraines and through the scenario that I did from all the meds after C-section was really a blessing in disguise. And I want to make another video about this topic of how getting sick, what does getting sick have to do with our spiritual process of sort of wakening up to our sense of purpose? And what are the advantages of getting sick in terms of what our sickness calls on us to do for our health and for reclaiming our life? And I know, even though I still have a lot of symptoms, thyroid stuff, I feel like my liver is still very compromised from the meds. On some level, I'm still terrified about what happened, but I think in a big picture level, I'm really grateful for the way that this event caused me to realize I had to take more responsibility for my health. And that taking responsibility for health and vitality, I mean, just this whole inquiry into what it is to be healthy. Health is not just the absence of disease, right? So I don't get migraines anymore, but that doesn't mean that I've reached the optimal state of health. And really, health is more than just not feeling crappy all the time. Health can manifest in subtle ways as just like an overall state of buoyancy, an optimistic attitude, feeling clear, feeling centered, feeling gently energized. And so I would like to challenge myself to continue going upwards on on my health journey, and to really continue to challenge myself even though I don't get migraines anymore. So the challenge that I am posing for myself, which I think is really important because I'm pregnant and I'm going to be in 7.5 months going through the marathon of childbirth. And I really need to have a strong, agile, fit body to actually successfully accomplish a natural home birth, which is what my intention is. And, I just noticed recently that, like, especially, I've always had low blood pressure, and if you've read my article on why and how I believe the antibiotics contribute to migraines and the way they compromise the kidneys and lower the blood pressure, I think that the understanding blood pressure as it relates to migraines is really, really kind of key to my understanding of how to support my body. So I don't get migraines anymore, but I definitely have low blood pressure, and I do notice mild headache symptoms on days when it's overcast, when the atmospheric pressure is lower, and also the blood vessels dilate more in the body, the pressure in the body goes down, and so there's less blood and oxygen flowing into the head, and as a result, I have head rushes and I get dizzy. And I know that being pregnant also affects blood pressure, and that since being pregnant, I've definitely had some days where I felt very lightheaded and very dizzy, and my blood pressure was very, very low. And I don't think this is the optimal state for me. And one interesting thing that happened to me was that when I breathe, I noticed that if I stood up really suddenly and I felt dizzy and had from the low blood pressure, if I would breathe out really, really all the way out, that my dizziness would go away as compared to if I breathed in really, really deeply. And this is interesting because when we exhale, we release carbon dioxide from our lungs, and I've been doing some research recently into breathing as how it relates to blood pressure. And what I found out here, it's pretty complicated. I don't pretend to understand it all yet. I'm going to do some more research, but basically increased CO2 leads to vasodilation, and faster breathing, more like hyperventilation, releases CO2 so it constricts the blood vessels. So it's known that like intense exercise will often lower blood pressure, which is not something I want because my blood pressure is already low. But on the other hand, exercise involves both not only faster breathing, but both deep breathing in and deep breathing out. So there's like this fluctuation. I definitely think exercise, even though exercise supposedly lowers blood pressure, is certainly beneficial to me. But probably breathing through the nose is better. That keeps more CO2 in your body. And so increased CO2 vasodilates, which means that the less you're breathing out, the more vasodilation you will have. So that out breath is really important. And if you're hyperventilating and you're getting, too much, you're not breathing out real deeply, but you're breathing in, a lot of little tiny short breaths in, you're getting more oxygen in, and that actually lowers the CO2, which constricts your blood vessels. So so actually faster breathing kind of makes sense for those of us who have low blood pressure, to constrict the blood vessels. Either really deep exhales or faster inhales. Anyway, so I don't really understand how all this works necessarily, but I do know that how I breathe affects my blood pressure, and that breathing out definitely helps with my dizziness, and that breathing out releases CO2, which is going to help vasoconstrict, right? Because increased CO2 vasodilates, so I want to get the CO2 out. Anyway, maybe even just some deep breathing exercises could be really good for me in getting my blood pressure balanced. Anyway, these are just my explorations, and I will check back with you with more research and my experiments in dancing and breathing and paying attention to my breath. I'm going to be looking into the Butenko method of breathing, and I just think there's a lot of resources out there, and this is just the area where I'm the most excited to connect the dots and hopefully raise my blood pressure. But a lot of the research out there, a lot of people have high blood pressure and hypertension, so a lot of the research is about how to lower the blood pressure. But my question for those of us who have migraines is how do we increase blood pressure and constrict the blood vessels? So any of you who want to support me on this quest, I would appreciate it. And thank you for watching my video. It was a little long-winded today, but I hope you're all having a great day. Take care.